This week on World Stories. Italy, the forgotten earthquake victims. A Palestinian museum of culture and solidarity. But we begin in the U.S. and the vigorous debate there about the purpose of statues commemorating the Confederacy and those who fought for it. One especially contentious example stands in Memphis, and its future is dividing the city.
A bitter dispute that escalated into a skirmish between protesters and police in Memphis, Tennessee. These dramatic scenes were filmed just recently when demonstrators tried to cover the statue of Nathan Bedford Forrest, a former slave trader, Confederate general, and suspected leader of the Ku Klux Klan. Tammy Sawyer organized the protest with the support of Danielle Inez, a young leader of the Democratic Party in Memphis. They both find the sight of General Forrest still staring down at them unbearable.
This structure of Nathan Bedford Forrest needs to be removed because it represents a hateful ideal that black people are not equal to white Americans. And knowing the beliefs of Nathan Bedford Forrest, it should not stand in a city that is majority African American.
Memphis City Council, which is dominated by the Democratic Party, voted to remove the statue 2 years ago. But the Tennessee State Legislative in Nashville disagreed. The Republican majority there passed a law that placed hurdles in the way of anyone wanting to get rid of Confederate monuments.
So we have to get a 2/3 majority vote from a special committee that's in place in Nashville. But in order to get a hearing, we have to make sure we notify every single person who might have a vested interest in that statue. And if we go to the state and say, hey, these are the people we've notified, if they come back and say, oh, you missed one, we have to start back over from square one.
Mark Buchanan. He is a member of an organization called Sons of Confederate Veterans. The group is dedicated to preserving Civil War sites such as this former military outpost and to honoring the memory of those who fought for the South.
I can understand that people are offended by these statues, but it's important to remember that it's much more complicated than that. These men came back home after the war and helped rebuild the country.
For Buchanan, monuments to Confederate heroes are part of America's heritage and not racist statements. Still, the debate has the potential to open old wounds in race relations, in Memphis of all places, where civil rights icon Martin Luther King was murdered in 1968.
I think they should take it down. Things like that are not really indicative of what our country represents today, so they should take it down and put it maybe in a museum where history belongs.
Our history is what, this country's based on, how it's began. And I don't think someone should terrorize or tear down or destroy things that are part of, what we stand for.
Meanwhile, Tammy Sawyer and her fellow activists are already planning new protests, and they are optimistic that in the end they will prevail.
1 year after a powerful earthquake hit the Italian town of Amatrice, the country is remembering the victims. Meanwhile, many residents are still trying to rebuild their lives. DW met with members of a community struggling to get back on its feet.
This used to be one of the most beautiful historic towns of Italy. Now, debris is all that's left of Amatrice. Even 1 year after the devastating earthquake, it still lies in ruins. Trucks and diggers arrived here just a few days ago. On the anniversary of the catastrophe, they're supposed to give the impression that things are moving forward. Antonio Shalanga's memories of Amatrice are buried under the rubble. He lost many friends here. He can't believe that things still look like they did 1 year ago.
We don't ask money. We don't want to have, helpful. We had a lot of helpful from the Italian, from the German, from the England, from every place in the world help Amatrice. We are really thankful about these things. We just ask with our bureaucracy, clean this place and let us work.
That's easier said than done. The town is a restricted area. Visitors can only enter with a special permit and have to be accompanied by the fire department. But rather than repair and rebuild, new prefabricated bungalows are being constructed. At the moment, there aren't nearly enough of them. Antonio Shalanga didn't want to wait. He owns a strawberry field and built a new house on his land. 36 square meters for him, his wife, and their soon-to-be-born child. Not a single cent came from the Italian government. Instead, they got dreams of red tape. Antonio still dreams of rebuilding his old house one day. First, the rubble has to be cleared. He often comes into the makeshift municipal office to confront the mayor. Mayor Sergio Pirozzi insists it's not his fault. He says the regional government is responsible for removing the debris of private properties. The municipality has done all it can.
Of course, things could be better than they are. There have been delays, but now there's a new supermarket where people can buy their groceries. And there are shops and new restaurants. This is all positive progress. But there still is a lot of criticism.
Amatrice will take years to rise out of the rubble, and time is against it. Many residents have already moved away. A year after the quake, it's clear that life here in Amatrice will never be the same again.
Nigeria now, and the northeastern town of Ran, home to a large camp for those fleeing the terrorist organization Boko Haram. The security situation means the town has only recently become accessible to aid groups. Disease is rife, and even in the clinic, life is grim.
We are heading for Ran, a remote town in northeastern Nigeria. On the way, we fly over burnt-out villages destroyed by Boko Haram. Helicopter is the only way to get here. In the rainy season, Ran is cut off from the outside world for several months. Aid organizations have been stockpiling supplies in readiness for the rains, but they haven't always managed to get deliveries through. The scars of terrorism are everywhere in Ran. The school is a ruin. Telephone communications have been down since Boko Haram destroyed this mast. The Nigerian army drove out the militants a year ago. Since then, thousands of refugees have been pouring into the town. At the small clinic run by Doctors Without Borders, teams face a whole range of sicknesses and disease. People who need more specialist treatment often don't have a chance.
There is what we can do and what we cannot do. If there is a people needing more than what we have here, there is nothing to do at this moment. There is no way to refer any patient.
So the person will basically die?
Yes.
Death is a constant companion here. Just before we leave, there's another funeral for Aisha, killed by malaria, aged just 7. She had diarrhea. They gave her medicine at the clinic, but after the diarrhea stopped, her whole body was in pain. And then she died. She's not the only one here. That often happens to small children here. If we had a better clinic, it wouldn't happen. But aid workers believe the number of malaria cases is set to rise in the coming weeks. The rain doesn't just disrupt supplies, it also means more and more disease-carrying mosquitoes.
Our last report this week is from the West Bank, where the Palestinian Museum has just opened its inaugural exhibition after a long delay. Titled Jerusalem Lives, it aims to recreate aspects of a city long fraught with religious division and political failure.
The Palestinian Museum in the occupied West Bank. For over a year, the new building near Ramallah stood empty. Now it's housing its first exhibition, Jerusalem Lives, featuring artworks from both Palestinian and international artists.
It's a real celebratory moment to finally open the inaugural exhibition at the Palestinian Museum, especially tackling the subject of Jerusalem and looking at it from the many facets of what the city is facing and at the same time representing its culture, its art, and how people are resisting everything they're facing today.
Artworks, video installations, photography, sculptures. The artworks deal with the politically contested city of Jerusalem, a city that many Palestinians from the West Bank or Gaza can't even visit without Israeli approval. This limestone sculpture is by Adar Jaber. Born in Italy to Iraqi parents, the artist now lives in Belgium. He drew inspiration from Jerusalem's history.
If you go to the holy places in Jerusalem, you have holy stones that are actually touchable because of their holiness. And art is untouchable because of its holiness as art. So I wanted to play with that idea. And this is a work of art that is actually touchable. It needs to be touched.
The inaugural exhibition also features Taiwanese artists duo Rain Wu and Eric Chen.
We're looking at this very ambiguous condition of borders and thresholds and boundaries. So we created an installation where people could walk through a very resonating, shaky environment.
The museum is privately funded and is regarded as the largest history and art project in the occupied Palestinian territories. The opening exhibition runs until December.